he said he had 25 pro fights, and he had his nose broken twice, and he said, I quit after the second time it was broken. I was losing the very few good looks that I had, so he quit. Now, you need to understand that in Montreal, Canada, back in the 30s and 40s, a wide open city in those days, boxers mingled with show people and politicians and mobsters, because the mobsters control the boxing in Montreal because they control the gambling. And that's what the boxing was for. It was to feed the gambling. And so my father was part of that. He grew up in that. After he stopped fighting, he opened dance halls. And he was a ballroom dance instructor, because in those days you had to learn footwork. You know, when you were boxing, it wasn't all about, you know, one punch knockout. You had to, you know, learn your footwork, and that footwork enabled him to be a dancer. He said, I would watch the Hollywood movies, and I learned to dance, and I, you know, opened up a studio. Was it Arthur Merrill? Studio, yeah, remember that? He had one of those, and my mom worked across the street in a restaurant, so he'd go over there for coffee, and they met, and so on and so forth, and they got together. And so they had a great time, because he was a bit of a local celebrity. You know, he was a boxer, and he was, you know, he was a ballroom dancer and all that business, and they would go out, and, you know, they'd work in the daytime, and at night they'd go to nightclubs, you know, the El Morocco in Montreal, famous nightclub, and they just had a lot of fun. After a while, my dad worked as a bouncer for a private gambling club called Club Rutella. And if you went into that club there, you could gamble. You could play roulette, and there were cards, and there was, you know, blackjack, all kinds of stuff like that. And I remember as a kid, maybe I was 12 or something, I'd go for my accordion lessons, because I was Italian, and Italians learn. I wanted to learn the saxophone, but my mother would not let me learn the saxophone. I had to learn the accordion like a good, you know, the son of an Italian boy. And after my lessons on Tuesday night, I'd take the bus back home, and I would stop on the way where my dad worked. And it was so funny. I'd knock on the door, and the guy would be looking through the hole, and I could hear, hey, it's Tony's kid, let him in, you know. So here's this 12-year-old boy in an illegal gambling parlor, you know, hey, how's it going, you know, and so on and so forth. So my dad worked there, and he made sure there was no trouble, because people would go in with their paychecks, and they'd lose their paychecks. And they were pretty upset when they lost their paychecks. You know what I'm saying? And so he made sure that they left, you know, and didn't start a trouble. Sometimes he would tell me he would give them some money for groceries or for taking a taxi home. He was well known in the Montreal underworld because of his association with mobsters, gamblers, that type of thing. He tried legit work in the sense of being a waiter and so on and so forth in hotels, but you know, he just loved gambling so much. He was a gambler. He loved gambling. I was an only child. And so he started being a bookie. He was a bookie. Now in those days, off-track betting was illegal in Canada, in Montreal. And it wasn't like England, you know. In England, you had betting parlors that you can go publicly, and you can go bet on the horses or on sports or whatever. That was illegal in Montreal, so he had the betting parlor in our house, apartment. We never owned the house. In our apartment, and that was before computers. And he'd have 2 or 3 telephones. Remember the old black rotary? He'd have 2 or 3 of those phones. They would ring all day long. People calling up to place bets on horses or, you know, boxing matches and sports and whatever. And he would write down everything in his little book. That's why they're called bookies. They have a book. And in the book, you have who bet what on what, how much you're supposed to pay them, or how much they're supposed to pay you. Because it was a good faith transaction. They would call and say, Tony, put $100 down on Gene the Joker, you know, number 2 horse at wherever, you know, at Belmont and whatever. And people paid. Because if they didn't pay, to this day, I still remember his name. My dad would send Mike Nero to collect. And if Mike Nero and his Louisville Slugger visited you, you paid or you were minus a kneecap. And that's the way that it was. Yeah. So he was a, fast-living guy, a good guy. He loved me. He was good to my mom, this and that, but he was just part of the mob, And I remember I was maybe 13. My mother was always had to work. If your father's a gambler, your mother has to work. Okay, that's just the way it works. Right? And so my mother was working, and I'd be home, and he'd say, Mike, yeah, Dad, what's up? 9, 10 o'clock. He says, okay, get dressed, put your nicest suit on. You can borrow my cufflinks, shine your shoes. I'm sending a taxi for you. You can come and have some spaghetti with me over at such and such a club. Yeah, great. Thursday night, school night. And I'm off in some place, drinking, not drinking, but eating spaghetti. And what he used to do is, I remember one time in particular, I went, it was a big thrill, it was all grown up. I was taking a taxi, people were saying, hey, Mike, Master Mike, when you were a kid. And I'm eating there, and I remember they had a floor show or whatever, 12, I'm 12. And the MC gets up and he says, and now we're going to have a special, a special deal. We have young Mike Mazzalongo who's going to play his accordion for us. Because my dad had sneaked my accordion out of the house and brought it to the club to make me play. That was the play he was doing. So that's what he did. He died in front of me when I was 15. He had a heart attack. And his funeral was right out of the movies. I mean, right out of the movies. When some sister or brother dies here, you'll have an announcement. Brother Fisto will get up and say, all right, Sister Jones or Sister Smith or somebody, passed away. The viewing will be Friday from 7 to 8 p.m. or from 7 to 9 p.m. And then the funeral will be Saturday, something like that, right? My father, the viewing was 3 days, from 10 in the morning till 10 at night, for 3 days. People streaming in all day. Didn't know 90% of them. Never knew 90% of them. I actually was introduced to my twin sisters that I never met in my life and did not know existed at that funeral. The only time I ever met them. Oh, by the way, here are your sisters. Oh, hi, how are you? We marched behind this funeral procession. My mother and I, we marched down the street to the Catholic Church. If you're Italian and you live in Quebec, believe me, 99.9% chance you'll be Catholic. And so, it was a big, big funeral. Now, on the night that he died, there were several men that came to the house, and the plan was they were going to open a restaurant, Tony's Spaghetti House, because he was a good cook. But actually, they were going to use his celebrity status, if you wish, as a kind of a front. Tony's Spaghetti House, the boys would meet there, they'd make some money, and so that's what they were going to do. And he left the house with $4,000 in cash in his pocket. He always traveled with cash. Never drove a car, always hired a taxi to drive him everywhere. And when he came home, that's about $30,000 worth today. Okay, in his pocket. He left. He came home that night, went to bed, didn't feel well. My mother woke me up. Dad's not feeling well. I went to look at him, and he was having the heart attack, and he died in front of me. That $4,000 was gone. We think that he gambled it away on the night that he died. We think that what caused the heart attack was the trouble he may have been in, because that might not have been his money. So there we were, my mother and I, broke, no house, one income. I remember several months went by after my dad died. A couple of guys would come to the restaurant where my mother was working. She told me the story and said, yeah, they wanted the book. Where's the book? She said, I threw it away, and she did. And they said to her, she would tell me later when I was older, they said to me, we know Michael goes to St. Brendan's school over there. His lovely teacher, his teacher's name, Miss Cynthia. In other words, we know where your kid is. And she said, look, I'm just a woman. I have no, nothing. I threw the book away. I just, There were cops that come to our house on a regular basis, envelopes of cash. I remember it. Oh, hey, that's Tony. Hey, Tony, what's going on? Yeah, you boys doing all right? Sure. Here we go. Thank you. Appreciate it. Walk down. One time they came to the house and they apologized to my dad. They said, Tony, we're sorry. We have to arrest you. And he said, really? He said, look, the captain, we just can't, we have to put some numbers in the book. He said, okay. He says, just let me put my papers away, the evidence. He put the paper, and I remember the cop saying, now look, no cuffs or anything. I'll go down first, bring the car, not a police car, I'll bring it around to the other street, and you and the other officer, you can walk down just casual, like you're just friends going out, because they did not want to embarrass him in front of his family, in front of the neighborhood. And he said, now, Mike, don't worry now. Don't be worried. It's okay. Dad will be home for supper. It's like all in a day's work. And he was home. He was home for supper. And so here we we're broke, no insurance, no money, no nothing. We had a fine funeral that must have cost a lot of money, and it was paid for by his associates. Let's put it this way. So my question is, so what does a young man do in a situation like that? How does a young man live? What direction does a young man take? Well, a young man follows the only man he knew. My father liked nice clothes. I like nice clothes. My father liked going to nightclubs. I like going to nightclubs. My father chased women. Well, I chased women. My father liked easy money. I like easy money. And so I followed in my father's footsteps. Not with the mob, but doing, shady things, businesses that were questionable. By the time I was 25 years old, I was making $150,000 a year just selling, buying, working for a company that really didn't have a stellar reputation. I had money and cars, and did what I wanted, lived the fast life, drugs, alcohol, you name it, whatever I wanted. I took as much as I wanted. Nobody was telling me what to do. And so many years of this left me broke, sick, getting off of drugs, reputation in tatters, living on my cousin's couch. Literally, living on my cousin's couch. And then something providential happened. I said to myself, I gotta get some kind of job, I gotta eat. And so, the little shopper weekly things that they give like at the grocery store, it's not like the Daily Oklahoman, it's a little shopper thing. It's got coupons in it, stuff like that. And in the middle, they have ads for things and sometimes some job, local job. So my cousin had one of those laying there. So I picked it up and I just started going through it. Maybe there's a local job. Just something to get going here because I can't live on my cousin's couch forever. And I saw ads for different churches. St. John's Catholic Church, bingo on Friday nights. St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, military whist, Saturday morning. Bethel Baptist Church, we love folks. I never saw a church that didn't like folks. That was their ad. And then there was this one column, little ad, just one single column, and this was what it said. Sinners are welcome at the Church of Christ. Sinners are welcome at the Church of Christ. And I looked at that and I said, that's me. They're talking to me. And there was an article about, we're sinners, we do stuff, and God loves us and God is looking for us and He wants to forgive us. And I went there and I said, I got nothing to lose, I've done it my way. So I go to this church. And I go to this church, check it out. So I've got black jeans on, I've got a jean jacket, I got a black silk shirt, I got my cigarettes in my pocket, dark glasses. This is how I'm dressed for church. And I come into this little bitty church, the Lachine Church of Christ, a church of 30. A church of 30 people. And I come in, I knew church, but I'd never been to a church like this. I was Catholic. And Hemsy Brown, Sister Hemsy Brown, from Jamaica. Come on in, darling. With that lilt, that lovely Jamaican lilt. And she said, come on in and sit down. So I said, I didn't like the music, I like jazz and things like that. And they were singing, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. Boy, that was a stretch, It sounded like country western music to me at the time. But she was so kind. She'd open the book, and she was maybe in her 50s, something like that, if I remember correctly, a grandma. And she said, well, here's the songbook, like a child, and she would show me, and now we're going to sing this song and this song. And then the communion came around. Well, I was Catholic. Communion, you went forward for communion. You went up to the altar rail, and you got your host, and you put it in your mouth. You didn't take the wine. That was communion. Here, they're passing trays out with little cups. What's up with that? But she would explain to me all along. She was giving commentary about what was going on. And then the sermon, and then it was all done, and we sang and everything. Then I stood up, and she gave me a hug. This stranger, this black woman, old enough to be my grandma, gave me a hug. And she said, will you come back? I said, maybe. She said, if you come back, I'll be here waiting for you. From here on in, the story is less colorful, more familiar. I go back, talk to the preacher, have a Bible study with him. I'd ask him a question. He'd open the Bible, flip, point to the passage. What does it say? I'd read it out loud. What does it say? I'd say, well, it says this. Are you sure that's what it says? Yeah, it's what it says. I'm not putting words in your mouth. No, that's what it says. Okay, next question. Well, what about this? Read that. What's that say? And that was our Bible study. And after a time, I was baptized in November 1977. Cold in Montreal. No heater in the baptistry. You gotta wanna. You gotta wanna. And so this little church was supported by the MacArthur Park Church of Christ in San Antonio, Texas. They went and they built that building, this little building for them, mission work. And the preacher there, Jim Metter and his wife, he was from Florida, and they sent money to support that guy to preach the people in Montreal. I preached his funeral this August. Yeah. That church is gone now. He's gone. My wife, Lise, and I were married. We started serving in the church. The first thing I did in the church, I said, what do you need done? He says, well, the floor in the auditorium needs washing and waxing. All right, I'm on my knees, wash and wax. That's what the Lord wants me to do. I can do it. What else? Well, we're going to redo the bathroom. We need you to knock the blocks down. Yeah, okay, whatever you need. And eventually, he brought me along, and I had some teaching experience, a long story, but anyways, I had teaching experience, so he said, why don't you try teaching a class? And he was in the class, and he'd watch me. And with time, I realized, I have found the thing that I have been looking for. I was looking for it, and I didn't even know I was looking for it. And so with time, packed up the kids and everything, went to Oklahoma Christian University, college in those days, to get a degree there. I had been to college, but I, got the major. My major was in missions, how to plant and grow churches, and my minor was in mass communications, radio, television in those days, because there was no internet. And then one night, I was in Montreal. This is a picture of Montreal from Mount Royal. Montreal is a city, it has a mountain in the middle of it. So you go to the lookout in the middle of the city and you see the city around you. It's really beautiful. It's a big city, 3 million people. And I looked at it and I realized, you know what, every one of those lights I see up there is somebody's house. And in that house, there's a TV and there's a radio. Like I say, no computers in those days. And you know what? I could talk to all those people if I could get on TV and radio and preach the gospel to them. That was the mission. And so I made not a foolish prayer, but a naive prayer. I said, God, you know, I was all about it. I said, Lord, make it so that I preach to 1 million people in my life. I thought 1 million people in my life, that would be a lot of people. Especially the church I was at had only 35 people. You know, I always say, when the Lord comes, not looking for big church, he's looking for faithful church. Yeah, sure. So I started doing stuff, a telephone ministry. 24 hours a day, members were manning the telephone, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had a chart. You took the phone on Monday from midnight to 4 a.m. Sister Josephine took it from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. Brother Joe, who's retired, he took it from 6 a.m. to 9 o'clock. And we put an ad in the paper, and if anybody called, there'd be a voice there. First year, 100,000 calls. First year. Amazing. We call it the daily gospel. I tried ads in the paper. I had a television program, the first network television program of the Church of Christ anywhere, but this one in Canada, in 2 languages. We would film them in English and then we'd film them in French. And I kept preaching to people. And then came Bible Talk. Bible Talk. Let's fast forward, shall we? I'm scrunching this down. By 2005, I'm preaching for a church that my wife and I have planted in our living room, which grew out of our living room into a building, and so on and so forth. And it's cold in Montreal. You think you got problems getting here on a Wednesday night? Like you got traffic? How about if it was 15 below zero and snowing? You think that would, be a help for you to get here? And so we said, you know what, all those people can't come on Wednesday, the elderly folks, and whatever. We got this new thing called the internet. It's been around a while. Why don't we, broadcast our lessons on the internet so the people at home from our church could watch, right? Live stream. Thankfully, our son-in-law, Hal Gatewood, married our youngest daughter, is a programmer. He knows about how to design websites, even back in those days when it was all starting. So we designed the website. The first time, 9 people. We were ecstatic. 9 people. Bible study on Wednesday, and there were 9 online watching. I thought, I've gone to heaven. This is marvelous. 9 people, amazing. And so we kept going. Let's just keep adding lessons. It would grow. And after a couple of months, there were like 500 people a month.
Wow.
In 2005, that was something. So let me show you the figure. Let's now really move forward to 2018. 150,000 visitors per month. Between 5,000 and 6,000 people come to our website every day. And they download lessons, books, series, sermons. We cannot count. There's so much, we've run out of ways to count it. And these numbers here, they're not numbers that we do. These numbers are given to us from Google. Once a month, Google, YouTube, they send us a report of how we've done. These are their numbers. 2 million total views on YouTube. 2 million. If I took a cat, if I set a cat on fire online, okay, I'd get a lot of people watching. You do crazy stuff, people watch. But what is it, after all? It's an old guy teaching the Bible. I mean, that's it. It's an old guy teaching the Bible, line by line, verse by verse. This is what this means, and so on and so forth. One camera, straight ahead with the notes. That's all it is. Nothing spectacular. You know what that tells me? There are people out there searching. That's what that tells me.
Yes.
That's what that tells me. 2.5 million minutes watched, streamed every single month. We have nearly 30,000 subscribers. You know what that means? Every time I put a new lesson online, 30,000 people get a notification on their phones that there's something new on Bible Talk. Google estimates that by the end of this year, at the rate of growth, we will probably have 6 million views. Just a little feedback, and then we'll sing a song, and I'm going to get into my lesson. Okay? I just want to read to you. Yesterday, I had 50, just yesterday, 50 letters, comments, questions. 50 in one day. People say, what do you do? I try to keep up with the mail. Because I look at every single comment, and I try to answer every single question. And so one guy says, I was an atheist all my life, coming from Soviet Russia with atheist parents. 2 months ago, I opened Matthew, and it was the best thing that happened in my life. I start to read and listen to the Bible. I started to pray. All of this changed my life so much. I'm living in Istanbul, Turkey. I want to be baptized. What would you suggest?
Wow.
Yeah. So what do? I email the preacher in Athens, just across the sea there is Athens, Greece. Turkey's over here, Greece is over here. So I email this guy, the preacher, I send him this email. Can you help this guy? Sure, tell him to get in touch with me. I email this guy over here, Benya. He's rejoicing. He said, okay. I said, my vacation's coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to book a ticket. I'm going to fly to Athens and meet with him. So a month goes by. I get an email from the preacher. Yeah, Benya, he came. We spent several days studying. I baptized him. I sent him back. Somebody said, well, did you not follow through, and how do you know he's at a church? Hey, did you follow through with the Ethiopian eunuch? Do you know what church he went to? And my thought is, if God can get him into the water, he can also get him into the body where he lives. Another one, real quick. I'd like to thank you in your church. Because Bible Talk exists on support. People, it's free. Why? Because churches of Christ support us. That's why. So he says, I'd like to thank you and your church for all the videos, resources you bless us with on your website. I'm a Christian living in South Africa, and I was baptized 3 years ago. I came across your website, totally hooked. Your Bible studies are answering so many of my questions and contribute richly to my spiritual growth. Your friend in Jesus, Arna. I mean, I could show you 50 of them. I could show you 100 of these a week. From all over. From Muslim countries where they want information on how to be baptized, but they want to be very careful about it. Got this one recently. I'd like to thank you for these amazing teachings of the Bible on Bible Talk. I'm a disabled veteran diagnosed with major depressive disorder with PTSD, and hearing the word is getting me through to see better days. My wife and I got baptized together on August 19th, 2018, and that would not have happened if God hadn't guided me to your classes. So we would like to thank you, and may Jesus Christ and the Father bless your church from this day until the return of the King. Day after day after day. And then, I want to remind people, if you, like here, you want to grow, Ernest and I, we've talked about this. Brother Anthony, rather. We've talked about this. Just, we want the church to grow. What's the first thing you have to do if you want church growth? Yeah, you got to sow the seed. If you don't sow the seed, you won't get any harvest. Does the person across the street there, have you put some seed in their mailbox? Or how about that guy over here? Have you preached to them? Because if you don't get the seed in your own community, you won't have a harvest. So we tell people Bible Talk is a seed sowing machine. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. While I sleep, it seeds. All right, I'm going to stop there. There's more stuff that I go on, but that's who I am. That's where I come from. I was a person searching, and the Lord found me. And so I decided that I would begin searching for the people who are searching. I leave to other people the debates. I would never get into a debate. I'd get shot and killed. I need notes just to tell my own story. There are better men and women than I who can debate the atheists. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who knows the Hebrew and the Greek. I'm not a scholar. I'm not an academic. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who was lost, who was searching and not even knowing what I was searching for. I was that guy. And I am convinced that there are many others like me out there.
Amen.
And that's my ministry, and that's my call, and that's where I come from. Okay? All right, we'll stop here. We'll sing another song. Where, you got a song? All right, we'll sing a song, and then we'll get into my lesson. I promise it won't hurt. We'll get you out in a reasonable amount of time. All right, my brother.